Hello. Games Workshop have released countless amazing miniatures, products, and books for Warhammer Fantasy over the years, and I would love to make deep dives about the history of every single one of them. But that is going to take me just a little while to complete. So in the meantime, I have been making brief 60-second shorts about some of the most interesting ones. I release them on Instagram, TikTok, and here on the YouTube Shorts feed. But if you've not had a chance to check them out, then fear not, because this is an anthology of 10 such shorts, all about Warhammer Fantasy. This is Warhammer Adventures, an Italian part work from 1996 that rewrote Warhammer 4th edition into something completely new. Warhammer Adventures was officially licensed from Games Workshop for the Italian market by Hobby and Work. Each issue included rules and tokens for this new skirmish game, produced by Massimo Turiani and written by legendary Italian designer Andrea Angiolino, who would go on to work on Wings of War. Readers could play using the character cutouts and floor plans included in the magazine. Existing Warhammer art was reused, along with newly commissioned pieces as well, and included translations of classic Warhammer fiction like Bill King's Gotrek and Felix story, Wolf Riders. The series ran for 28 issues and grew to be an encyclopedia of the Warhammer world. And though I don't speak Italian, I will play Warhammer in any language. This is the Uniforms and Heraldry of the Scaven, a hardback book looking at the colours, patterns and liveries of the various factions of Scaven in the Old World. Written by Neil Hodgson and Robin Cruddas, the book was released in 2010, one of 3 in a series alongside the Empire and the High Elves books. A double-page spread shows some of the most common runes and markings of the Scaven, whilst the following pages show the typical colours and clothing worn by 25 different clans and factions of infamous Ratmen. There's even some brief details on lesser-known clans, such as the Spittle, Scuttle, and Skrittlespike. Seemingly a massive labour of love for the writers and artists, it's a shame that more of these colour guides weren't produced. But it was always going to be difficult to beat seeing so many colourful rat boys in one place. Good. This is a box of Bretonnian Corsairs from the Warhammer naval game Man of War. Released in 1993 and designed by Nigel Stillman, Man of War took the battles of the Warhammer world onto the high seas. In the lore of the time, Bretonnians were famous for their seafaring prowess, and the Corsairs were their swift and reliable ships of the line, bristling with broadside cannons. The box included a squadron of 3 ships, sculpted by Norman Swales, along with sprues for the plastic masts, and a sheet of sails and flags. The smaller sibling of the Corsair were the Buccaneers, tiny vessels armed with catapults and typically crewed by condemned criminals. Though, most impressive of all in the Bretonnian fleet was the mighty Bretonnian Galleon, a beautiful powerhouse. Man of War showed an element of the Warhammer world that was as yet unseen, and the Bretonnian Corsairs rode the waves like few others. These are the Chaos Dwarf Renegades, a collection of 8 evil dwarves committed to the ruinous powers. Sculpted by Alan and Michael Perry, the set includes characterful Chaos Dwarves like Mad Marek the Trollbiter, Kazek Doomlord, Drum and Drone Ulson, the Master of Madness, and Doom Axe the Dreaded. The box art was created by John Blanche, and the painted minis shown on the back were by Colin Dixon. The set was released in 1986 alongside the Heroic Fighters of the Known World box, both priced at £4.95. Until then, dwarves had been considered the staunchest enemies of chaos, incorruptible and unpollutable, but then the Chaos Dwarf Renegades emerged in their almost Brian Froudian style armour and full of character, and changed everything. These guys represent one of the earliest moments in the history of a pretty unusual Warhammer army, never fully embraced, but definitely a key part of the lore. This is the Warhammer Quest Bretonnia Knight, one of 9 character expansions released for the Dungeon Crawling Classic. Originally released in 1997, the character box included everything you needed to play this wandering warrior. The knight joined adventuring parties to recover a lost Bretonnian relic, and kept in his possession a questing favour, a token of the lady's blessing for his courageous undertaking. As with all of the character boxes, a rule booklet provided new special rules and advancement tables for when the character acquired more renown in the Warhammer world with each successful quest, and there was a special location available battle in settlements, the Baron's Castle. David Gallagher painted the beautiful box art. The fantastic miniature was sculpted by Gary Morley and features a wonderful heraldic shield. The knight was the last original official character released for Quest, but with Bretonnians riding into the old world once again, I have no doubt that he is still out there on his virtuous adventure. This is the Scaven Warp Hunters Warband for Mordheim. Released in 1999, Mordheim was designed by Thomas Pirinen as a skirmish-level game set in the history of the Warhammer Fantasy setting. Skaven were one of the starter warbands, along with human mercenaries included in the core box. The core book included rules for human factions like Middenheimers, Reichlanders and Marienburgers, as well as the Sisters of Sigmar, and you could play as the Cult of the Possessed, Witch Hunters, the Undead, and the Skaven. The Mordheim magazine Town Crier would later add a myriad of new warband options too, including Amazons, Pit Fighters, Dwarf Treasure Hunters, and the marvellous Carnival of Chaos. Thanks to a fantastic setting, the incredible artistic stylings of John Blanche, and some awesome gutter runners, this was a worthy tribute to the Great Horned Rat and one of Games Workshop's best ever games. This is the Monstrous Arcanum, a bestiary of arcane and bloodthirsty beasts for use in Warhammer Fantasy battles. Published in 2012 by the only briefly active Warhammer Forge, the fantasy equivalent to 40k's Forge World, the Monstrous Arcanum provided art, descriptions, and rules for more than 30 rare and uncommonly dangerous creatures from across the old world. Classic monstrosities like the Fimir and Elemental of Death were revived, alongside brand new creatures like the Scaven Brood Horror. The book was written by Talima Fox, Neil Wiley, and Forge World legend Alan Bly, and alongside Tamakan was one of the only 2 Warhammer Forge supplements to be released. There was to have been a third, but that unfortunately didn't make it. The Battle of Blackfire Pass. The Monstrous Arcanum remains one of the most beautiful rulebooks Games Workshop has ever produced, and a tantalising glimpse of the sadly unrealised potential of the Warhammer Forge. This is Return of the Witchlord, one of the first expansions released for HeroQuest in 1991. Designed by Games Workshop and Milton Bradley, Return of the Witchlord provided players with extra skeletons, zombies, traps, cards, and quests to expand their games of HeroQuest. But like its sibling Keller's Keep, it featured no new miniature sculpts, but there would soon be plenty of new monsters to play with. Against the Ogre Horde introduced ogres to the game and even took the action outside the dungeon. Wizards of Morcar gave players the chance to recruit henchmen to aid their heroes, whilst the villains recruited 4 new evil magic users like the Orc Shaman and the Necromancer. In America, there would be 2 new additional exclusive MB developed expansions, the Barbarian and Elf quest packs. Sadly, the Wizard and Dwarf quest packs never got completed. Witchlord may not have been the most exciting expansion, but its Les Edwards cover remains unbeaten. This is Lustria, the special edition version of the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay sourcebook that covers the most dangerous continent in the Warhammer world. The book contains everything GMs and players need for campaigns in the Lustrian jungle, covering the inhabitants, flora, and fauna that pretty much all want to kill you. There's tons of history and lore about the Old Ones, their servants the Slann, and the mighty protectors of order in the Warhammer world, the Lizardmen. And you'll find plenty of coverage of the High Elf explorers of the Citadel of Dusk, the Norse traders and their colony of Skeggi, the plague-riddled vermin of Skaven clan Pestilens, and the pirate undead of the vampire lord Harkon. Released digitally and in regular and special edition physical versions by Cubicle 7, this sourcebook for the 4th edition of the game is spectacular. Lizardmen, Ratmen, Pirate Men, oh my, this book fills a 40-year-old gap in Warhammer history, and I can't wait to explore it. This is the 1989 HeroQuest Barbarian, a muscular legend carrying a mighty broadsword. The Barbarian featured on the Les Edwards illustrated covers for the game and many of its expansions, but though there was a similar character on the John Sibbick painted cover for Advanced HeroQuest, no such Barbarian miniature would be found in the box. Instead, an armoured knight joined the party of heroes. In 1995, Warhammer Quest would reunite the Barbarian with his compatriots. Citadel released plenty of other Barbarians over the years too, with the CO1 Barbarians range in 1986, and then a new collection of Barbarians in the Fighters series, first available in 1987. There was even a Barbarian in the Talisman expansion in 1986, and the 3rd edition version of the game. And in the original Dungeon Quest lineup, you'd find one as well. And that's not even to mention the Norse, Chaos Marauders, Thrud, the Dark Oath Savages. Basically, there have been a lot of Citadel Barbarians over the years.